Welcome to Business on Purpose, the podcast for hardworking entrepreneurs who drive our economy. I'm your host, Barry Barrett, and as a sales leader and business owner, I understand the challenges that come with entrepreneurship. Each episode, I am interviewing business owners who have faced the same struggles you have. Low revenue, a lack of scalability in their sales force. Together, we're going to explore their entrepreneurial journey and uncover the valuable lessons they've learned along the way. From mentors to advice, we'll dive deep into what has helped these business owners get unstuck and move forward towards success. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned entrepreneur, the podcast is for you. Be sure and follow and subscribe to this podcast as we learn from the experiences of successful business owners and navigate the road to entrepreneurship together. Let's get started. Tell me who AJ is, but more importantly, what business are you in? What made you get your start?
Yep. I'm in the automotive repair business, and I just think that's the trade I fell into. I think back to, I think it all started with Legos. That was me as a kid, 4 or 5 years old, still possibly a rugrat. I don't even know if I was walking then, but just I had the knack, as they call it, the knack for putting stuff together, taking things that are broken, fixing them, things like that. Actually, as a kid, I remember just taking apart stuff and not being able to put them back together, so that didn't go over well with the parents. But yeah, and then as far as like how I got my start, I remember when I got my driver's license, that's really when I started to take a deeper dive into vehicles, wanting to understand how different systems worked. And my dad, he dabbled in engineering in school for a little bit and didn't go down that career path. He actually was in graphic design, but he still had the knack for explaining how these different systems work, drawing these systems out, and to where it really started to make sense. And my first job right out of high school, my first full-time job, was working at a shop, an independent repair shop. And I remember the steps that I had to take to get my foot in the door. This is a shop I always admired. And back when I started, I had Hondas and stuff and tinkered with my own vehicle. This is before the Fast and the Furious came out. And then when that movie came out, ruined it for everybody. But anyway, just I wanted to get my foot in the door in a shop and just work on cars. And this one was, I had always had my eye on it. And I just being persistent, man. I was being annoying. I just kept showing up like, hey, you hiring? And then I just remember one day, they were like, all right, you know what? Bring your toolbox on Monday. And that was me getting my foot in the door. I remember my boss didn't even know my name really well for the first month. And he forgot to pay me a handful of times. I just remember having to like ask him nicely, like the following month, just like, hey, John, I never got paid last week. So I was only making $200 a week. I thought that was awesome and just cash under the table. But again, I was willing to put in the time and the effort to learn the trade, sweep the floors, do whatever I needed to do to learn and hone that craft. And I guess you could say that's where I got my start in this.
Would you say he's your first mentor?
Yeah, they certainly were. The owner, John, he saw something in me, but it took, I remember Dave Weaverling, man, he was the guy that like really took me under his wing to learn the shop skills, like talking about extracting rusty studs out of cylinder heads and knocking off exhaust bolts, and he just taught me shop skills, man. The stuff and I never went to trade school, by the way. I never went to any of those. So I was never classically trained, I guess you could say. It was just all on the job training. He taught me all the tips and tricks of the trade and the shop skills that was the investment of his time. But yeah, he saw something in me. I have had and have that curious mind to ask the questions, and being a quick learner, he showed me something one time, I generally got it. And so anyway, that like I had an extremely steep learning curve under his wing, and I worked under him for probably 3-5 years, something like that, before he parted ways and did his own thing. But that was like my first real mentor in that trade. And I think really ultimately, no matter who your mentor is, you yourself have to have one. You got to be a sponge, right? One, for them to give their time, to trade their time, to invest their time in you, you got to be receptive. There has to be reciprocity to all this. I was the guy that was asking the questions, that completely engaged, all in 100%. And people like that, mentors, they'll do it for free. Everyone eventually wants to get to a point where they love to be able to give back. And Dave certainly did that for me. And like I said, that was my initial really steep learning curve in the trade, 100%.
Yeah. So after you left there, where did you go? Why did you go?
Yeah, and I worked there for about 10 years. And in the meantime, I bought a house in Edgewater, Maryland, which is where I live now. And I just remember the first 2 words of the house description was mechanic's dream. I was like, "Ooh, I got to check this out." And it had this really awesome garage behind the house, had an in-ground lift, the air compressor, had everything. I didn't really care much about the house, just cared about the garage. And so I bought that house and I started working on the side at night, things like that, on neighbors' vehicles and things of that sort. And I then had enough work to just decide to go on my own. Parallel to me working at this other shop, I also did pursue a racing career, and I got to a semi-professional level, but then I got to a point too where the sponsors dried up. So I knew I didn't have a full-time season put together for 2010 or 2011. So I thought the timing was perfect. I had enough work to go on my own. And that's what I started doing. I decided we left on great terms. And my boss too at the time, John, he encouraged me to do it and wished me luck. And I did have an opportunity to take ownership of that location, but I wanted to do it my way. I wanted to have full, complete control, autonomy, all that stuff to make my own decisions. So again, I'm glad I did it. That was in 2011. And yeah, and then along the way, then you start to expose yourself to other mentors. When you get into business, for example, as the end all to be all in technicians, of course, in my mind, no one could work on cars as good as me is the way I would think about it. But I wasn't making any money, right? I didn't know anything about running a business. And that's where the next phase of my life really took hold, was getting into a business management course and really understanding. And again, with that same mindset, that same attitude, being a sponge, asking the right questions, seeking advice. And the things that I learned in that business management course was that next steep learning curve that just allowed us to really flourish and expand. And through that process, you go through a lot of your first hire, your first fire. I'm hiring technicians now, and then as you're growing, you're hiring an advisor, and you're really just trying to have to let go. And it's scary, but you got to trust the process, and you're going to make mistakes. But yeah, that all started in 2011, but I really didn't start taking it seriously until 2015. And that's when that next phase of the trajectory really took off.
How did you find, you said you took a business management course. How did you find and decide what business management course to take?
Yeah, it was funny. It was like, I remember reading a trade magazine and I saw the name pop up, and I Googled them and I went right to their website. And I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And this company was specific to the independent automotive repair shop owner. That's how much of a niche that is there. And I submitted my info. I got a call back the next day from one of the sales reps there. And I'm like, look, I know everything about cars, know nothing about running a business. What do you recommend? And they had this thing called a guerrilla shop management course, and it was a 12-week like boot camp. And my wife and I at the time, we slave all day in the shop, and then at night we'd hit the class, and it was 2-hour classes, 12 weeks, 2 days, 2 times a week. And we were implementing things next day, and it was just like this, just a fire hydrant of information and tips and tricks and ways to just add value to the customer experience, which was huge. And how to develop a business plan, how to establish a relationship with a banker, all these things that like didn't even knew were things to do. We were learning quite quickly along the
So
way.
we have a history, and RLO is the company you're talking about. I work
Yep.
there as well, which is really cool. It's how we got to know each other.
Yeah.
If you were giving advice to someone who has just started a business, or even maybe they're deeper into their business, but they're struggling a little bit, would you tell them to start with an industry specific mentor, or would you tell them to go somewhere else?
Yeah, I think industry specific, if you can find it and if it exists, if you're in a big enough field, they're all out there. They all exist in almost every industry, and like 20 groups, for example. So I'm in a couple of different 20 groups. I'm in one specific to independent auto repair shops, another one specific to tire groups and things of that sort. But no, I highly encourage, because look, you're the average of the top 5 people you hang out with. And if you're looking to continue that climb and grow, you need to be surrounding yourself and rubbing shoulders with people smarter than you. And I think just having always had that mindset of wanting to be surrounded by the people that I look forward to becoming is absolutely instrumental. So being involved in those groups and those coaches that are specific to the trade, that have been there, done the deals, been like, you think you're at your worst because you have to make your first fire. Someone that's been in this industry has let go of hundreds of people, right? So they know the process and they just guide you along the way. And I highly recommend industry specific. If you can't, there's still always tons of groups out there that just offer coaching. Just the coaching that is huge is just having that accountability partner, someone that asks you the thought-provoking questions and tries to get that out of you, and where you're coming up with the answers and the solutions, but then also offering the accountability to hold you to it, to whatever that is, whatever your goal is, personal or professional. But yeah, highly recommend it. It's huge.
Yeah, that's good. So you obviously have mentors today. How do you pick your mentors? What are you looking for them today? And how much different it is from your original group?
And yeah, Barry, yeah, we met through RLO training, which is great. So when we went through that guerrilla shop management course, the next step was like to do some service advisor training. And you were the lead trainer for them at that time. And I just remember really being wowed by you, just because I just felt like we aligned in our personalities, always wanting to be better today than we were the day before. And just what I call a growth junkie, right? Just always wanting to continuously self-improve. And we just clicked like that. And so, yeah, really, you were like, you were part of this entire journey. You still are today, of course, as far as just improving myself. And you're such a learned individual that I've learned so much from you along the way, the books to read, the podcasts to listen to, the network. That's the thing too, when you've got a mentor and a coach, they know so many people, right? So it's amazing the amount of times when I've been in a bind or an issue or I need advice or this, that, maybe that person doesn't know it, but they sure as heck know someone else that has been down that path and can help guide you along the way as well. So the mentors that I surround myself with as well, besides yourself, is I'm in a Vistage group, which is huge. And I like that. So Vistage, they have chapters all over the world. But what I like about that is it's not specific to an industry, and they're in your own backyard, right? And you can really start to network with like extremely successful entrepreneurs that are in your backyard that, again, as they always say too, it's lonely at the top, right? And so generally when you're at the top of your organization, a lot of people may think that like nothing can go wrong. It's like the President's Club, right? There's only been so many that's been the president of the United States. So who else are you going to turn to but other presidents to guide you as you're moving forward? Luckily, there's more CEOs than presidents. That being in that Vistage group, that CEO roundtable group is huge because they're in my backyard. You establish a relationship, you network with these guys, and they're family, guys and gals. And it's funny. I was just texting with a couple of them just this morning, going over some stuff and issues, and that's huge. And it's all about huge proximity principle. It's actually a book too, but it's huge, man. Just being around, rubbing shoulders with people that are running $100 million businesses and things like that. Again, that's the next trajectory that we want to strive towards. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, this is a full circle moment for me because we have been through so much and we've been together so long, and like you're one of my 5 people, and it's a powerful thing. And I think one of the things that I'm deeply passionate about is helping people understand that if you start with a dream, a little, even if it's a small one, and then you get around people and it grows a little bit, and as long as they're just a couple of steps ahead of you, they can help you. That's all you got to do is be, and that's what I try to help people understand too, is all you got to do is be 1 or 2 steps ahead of somebody and you can help them. Right. Mm-hmm. And so tell me about some people today that you are helping, that you're giving back to, and you're starting to make them the average of the 5 people of you because you've gotten a margin, at least a margin of success, right?
Yep.
What are you doing today to help people and mentor other people?
Right. Yeah. And that's internal and external. Here at our company, we don't call them employees, we call them unicorns. We got 35 of them or somewhere around there. And so we get the ability to impact their lives every day and mentor them. And those that seek, I will give my time. Again, just knowing where I was at a younger age. And so when you see that type of individual that's asking the right questions and wanting to be a sponge and grow, I will gladly give my time for them. And then also too, at a leadership level of my leadership team, I've got 4 direct reports there, and I get the ability to impact them every day. I get to speak with them on a daily basis and guide them in what they're struggling with personally and professionally. And again, it's a family, right? It's a family at that level too. And we've got a really healthy organization as a result. We can have arguments with one another, right? We can have healthy conflicts, and we can be vulnerable too with each other. Again, like I said, if it's personal and professional issues, we're dealing with it all the time. But then also too, I remember when I first joined my first 20 group of that in RLO, in that shop owners group, and I was the new kid, and so I was the sponge, just soaking all the stuff up from all these successful shop owners. And now over time, I'm the one that others look up to, and I'm flattered by that. But they seek me out for advice and helping in problem solving and decision making and things of that sort. Whether it's buying another business or a pay plan or a hiring issue, whatever it might be. I love that ability that we're setting an example that others are looking up to. Again, it's given me the opportunity to help. And again, gladly ready and willing to do that. And one of the core values of the EOS there is help first. And yeah, we enjoy that. And our time is valuable. Our time is finite. And especially too, with people like us, we value our time. There's nothing more valuable than time. So if I'm going to invest my time, I want it to be a worthy cause. So we're not going to do that just for anybody. It's gotta be the right fit for us to do that.
Yeah, you mentioned EOS. I happen to be the honor of being your implementer. And it's 5 things: EOS life, doing what you love with the people you love, making a huge impact, being appropriately compensated, having time for other passions. So I want you to tell me, because really, and I know what's deep into you, and really the deepest into me about those 5 things is making the huge impact. Can you tell me how you and your company what is your making a huge?
Yeah. My core purpose is changing lives by inspiring values. And it sounds cliche and, frou-frou and this, that, and the other, but it's part of our hiring process. Is I always do the final interview and I go over our core values, our core purpose, and they need to hear it from me because it starts from the top down. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we get everybody inside the organization. It's not just me. Everyone inside the organization has the ability to impact others, right? Whether it's internal or external, right? One of our core values is create raving fans. And we state that publicly, and it's create raving fans as customers, but we feel that happens if we create raving fans internally, right? And if we can remove the obstacles in their way, reward and recognize great talent, pay them appropriately, right? That EOS life, and just give our employees that as far as what that looks like, show them what retirement looks like, all the benefits that we offer, the community involvement, things of that sort. When you really take care of your people internally, your stakeholders, that gives you the opportunity again to make that impact, and then as a byproduct, you're going to create raving fans externally to your shareholders or your customers. So that's and we just happen to be in the automotive repair industry, right? We just happen to fix cars. That just happens to be our trade. We could be in anything, right? But ultimately, too, it's still the trade is important because we keep people mobile. We keep people going. We get people to school. We get people to soccer practice. We get people to work safely and efficiently and service with a smile. We get to do that. And it's fulfilling in so many different aspects of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you've been in business by my math, what, 11 years?
Yeah. Yep.
So
2011.
I got 3 different audiences for you. Number one, I need advice for a startup. Then I'm going to need advice for someone who's been in business for about 5 years. And then I'm going to need advice for somebody that's been in business for 10 years because, hey, you got to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of somebody. So First of all, give me advice for the startup.
So one, it's the startup is the act of doing. There's a lot of dreamers out there. There's a lot of people that think about great ideas all the time, but the amount of people that actually do, it's so few and far between. So one, you've got to be uber passionate about it. Like you got to be willing to put it on. I tell people this all the time. I'm an all-in guy, dude. I don't care if I've got to sleep in my vehicle, if I got to sell my house to make this dream work. I don't care. It's not about the money. Again, the money is just a representation of the value you create in the world, right? I am an all-in guy, and I'm super passionate about this. And when I started this too, super passionate about the dream that I had. I knew I was in an underserved area. I knew there was an opportunity here. People were yearning for the service that I was looking to provide. But at the end of the day, you got to have just this relentless work ethic. You've got to put in the hours. There will be sacrifices along the way. And just know it's going to suck, man. It's going to really suck, but you got to embrace it. It's what Steve Jobs say about the crazy ones, because anyone that's sane, when they see the amount of effort and work that you're doing, they would consider you insane, right? And that's the kind of person you got to be. Your friends and family won't get it. And that's the kind of relentless work ethic you must have in the startup phase of your business to see it through. But also too, in that, yeah, you got to have that drive. And I'll tell you what, man, if you want something bad enough, the universe will conspire to make it a reality, right? So whatever you do, can never give up. You're going to run into failures. You're going to run into challenges. That's part of the journey. And if you never had failures, you'd never be able to celebrate what a win feels like, right? You've got to have the failures to understand what a win looks like. And it's going to suck, startups. But I remember in that phase and just being like, just the adrenaline rush from it all. Just my happiness level then is the same as it is today. And nothing really at my core has really changed. But there's a handful of traits that people need to have to see through that startup phase.
Yeah. You said it's semi-pro earlier when you're talking about your racing career. And have you ever heard my take on semi-pro versus pro?
No.
Would you like to hear it?
Sure.
So I tell people, if you're a semi-pro, you're really just a pro, and you just are a really low-paid pro. Yeah. You're not semi-pro. I think that's what people tell themselves to feel good about it. And I'm like, no, you're just a pro. You're just not paid very well.
That's a good one. Yeah.
In your startup phase from 2011 or 12 to 2015, would you have told the younger you to stop being a semi-pro, to dive all in on this pro thing that you're dealing with?
Yeah. And that was funny because like really during that phase, 2011, I started it, and I would say that I was dabbling in auto repair. I really wasn't like all in taking it seriously. It really wasn't until I met my wife when I was doing other extracurricular activity. I was traveling the country. I was working as a contractor, as a professional driver for automotive education and event companies. I was doing background acting. I was pit crewing for teams. I was doing all sorts of weird stuff, living the bachelor life, right? Just traveling all over the country. I had a lot of fun, but it wasn't until I met my wife that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put all this other stuff aside, all the distractions aside, just solely focus on the automotive repair business. And then that's when I went to seek, out the help and the coaching and the mentorship from RLO training. And I got into that management course. So I'd really say my startup phase, I would say, honestly, it started in 2014. It's right when we got married. We took the course and we were implementing things next day. And yeah, man, putting in the work. And then 2015, we had cars parked, again, working in a one-bay garage behind my house. I was working on all my neighbors' cars. I had cars parked up and down the driveway and other people's driveways and down the street. And I knew this wasn't sustainable. So I was always looking for that next opportunity to purchase a location. And we talk about that startup phase. And I would really say that the grind was in those years of end of 2014 through when we opened our doors to our real first location, which overnight I went into a 9-bay operation, bought the land, and everything had to line up just right though. But like I said, that relentless work ethic that has to be there through and through to see it. I maxed out every credit card, man. I was getting 0% interest rates on credit cards for 18 months, just throwing everything on it, maxing everything out, borrowing money left and right, but dead up to my eyeballs. But I knew I could make it happen. I just knew that this was going to succeed. And it was a heck of a journey. The environmental remediations that we went through, the hiring, the firing, just all the work that had to be done to this dumpster of a location, honestly, to clean it up and get it open and open our doors. But loving every minute of it, working all day in my garage behind my house, and then packing up the cooler and going to the shop and working on it through the night, whether I'm epoxing the floors or painting the bathroom or just doing whatever just to get it built and get it started as fast as we could. And now we're today I'm in my 5th location. We're just opening this up starting tomorrow. We're going to start taking cars in tomorrow. So we're excited about it. But
yeah. So I didn't come up with my semi-pro definition until I looked back on my career. And there was one point in my career where I was a semi-pro salesperson. I was just a really low-paid salesperson. Yeah, so I had to get some mentors and learn how to be a pro.
To be a pro, know your worth, right?
Yeah, don't be a semi-pro. Exactly. And I was driven by distraction. Like there was a lot of stuff, and I was a young man just like you. I had all these things going on, and then when I got a family, I'm like, wait a minute. There's something to these wife and kids that require me to make more money if we want to live in the land of happier. I'm already happy.
True.
I just want to be happier.
Yes.
So how about your 5-year business advice?
Yeah, 5-year business advice. I think that's when for me, I would say that the 5-year thing was, I remember, I'll never forget this, man. I was distinctly, like, pretty much I got to a point by year 4 or 5, where I had 2 service advisors up front running the shop. I got 4 technicians in the back, and I was just a shuttle driver, man. Like, I literally was realizing I worked myself out of a job, and I'm not one to twiddle my thumbs for a long time. I just remember shuttling a customer, and I'm like, is this it? Should I just keep the one location? Is this all that life? I could be happy. I was going to be happy one way or the other, but do I want to push? Have I found my ceiling? Is what I was really asking
Mm.
myself. And I mulled it over for all of 30 seconds, and I'm like, nope. We're gonna push the envelope here. I knew that then I really wanted to get into multi-shop ownership. This was like in 2019. Started looking at some potential candidates in starting the beginning of 2020, and then COVID hit, and then I just everyone else too went into preservation mode and just decided to hold back and see how the dust was going to settle. But we ended up getting our second location in last August was number 2, and now it's November 2020 through. Yeah, that's right. And we're at 5. So we've had this massive trajectory. But anyway, regardless, knowing that I was going to get into multi-shop ownership, it was that plateau that you hit where
Mm-hmm.
it's me as the owner, ultimate direct report kind of guy, location manager. But knowing that, and with EOS, you start to forecast what your accountability chart with your VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, what it's going to look like into the future, your 1 year, 3 year, 10-year, right, target. And so knowing that, okay, I want X amount of locations by this date with this many people, you got to reverse engineer what the vision looks like and also build what the chart looks like with your people. And that accountability chart comes into play. So knowing that, I was going to have middle management, right? I was going to have a
Mm-hmm.
leadership team, develop a leadership team. And so that's something that we really, and it was actually right about a year ago. We had our first, it was a year ago, like
Yeah, it
right
was about a
now, I
year
think
ago. So
November.
that's your 10. Now
Yeah.
you're getting into your 10-year advice, right?
Yep, exactly. And that was a big first step, was also too just finding a playbook to run the business on.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time, and it was actually an RLO, it was a recommendation to read that book Traction. It was a handful of years ago. And man, I read that book, it just clicked. And as a technician, you're just wired to know how things work, and there's tools in the toolbox, right? And that's the analogy, of course, that EOS uses to run just about every facet of your business. And so that book clicked. And thanks to you, Barry, we worked on that Vision Traction Organizer to start with. And I didn't really have a leadership team too involved in doing that. So we went on our own and developed what the core purpose, the core values, 10-year target, all that stuff was done. And then I worked on putting the right people in the right seats to surround myself with a leadership team, that core leadership team. And so, yeah, we really finalized that last year. And man, I can't have a healthier team right now that get it, want to have the capacity to do it, that align with our values and that are on the bus. And me as the captain, they're ready to row this ship in the right direction. That was a huge breakthrough for us, because once we established, again, at one location, I was having to spend a lot of money on the leadership. So again, I'm paying now employees that don't directly produce income, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was another big challenge, was having to really, again, all in, right? I'm an all in guy. I will fork and front the funds for salaries for people that aren't producing directly, like they're not a service advisor selling work, they're not a technician working on cars, they're management. So it's scary, but again, I knew that this was to build upon. It's the foundational stuff that you need to build your team. I'm so glad we did that, because there's a lot of the inverse of that is people will just blow up wildly by themselves, and then they realize there's so much chaos inside the organization that then that's when they spend the time to try to organize it, work on the culture. And that's really tough, especially with a lot of people. There's a lot of sometimes tribal knowledge at a lot of locations. So the consistency is hard to get followed. The operational excellence isn't there. So again, we figured if we could just make the investment now and early and start that baseline here, it's just now we can just start to add on and build from there. And again, it's just manageable at this point.
So
We got wheels on no one.
you'd say at 5 years, you started majoring in minor things, shuttle driving, right?
Yeah.
And then in 10 years, you said, hey, man, wait a minute. What I need to do is make sure that I build a strong leadership team. And so we can not only scale the business monetarily, but make sure that we have this deep rooted culture and deep rooted processes that everybody follows so that we can scale this thing in a healthy way. Is that it?
Yep. 100%. Yeah. And we're saying 5-year and 10-year examples. There's nothing to say that you should be, even if you're a startup, there's nothing wrong to be thinking about this now. Your accountability chart is of one person on your startup, but you can still create what the roles look like in your organization 3 years, 10 years down the road, and start to understand how to, and know when to backfill those positions. What's the first position? So for me, the first role for me to let go of was being a technician. And so that's hard for me because that's all I'd ever done was work on cars. So when I took my toolbox home, that was a leap of faith. And I forced myself to take my toolbox home, not work on cars, and just solely work the front counter and interact with the customers. And so that's part of that evolution as you're growing. And so again, you don't have to be a 10-year business to be thinking of these things, of course.
No. And we would say in EOS, in the beginning, you have one person in your organizations, but the seats still exist. You still have an integrator seat. You still have a sales and marketing seat. You still have an operations seat. You have a finance seat. But wouldn't you say the problem most people have is they try to sit in every seat at the same time and they never really know what they're working on when they're working on it, different roles and those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's true too. You gotta figure out the high important, high urgency versus the low important, low urgency. So figure out the stuff that you hate doing.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
That's generally the first you're getting, the delegate and elevate. And that's huge. And those are things that you have to recognize on your own. You got to reflect and figure out what your strong suits are.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, as you're starting to formulate what function or role is the first to backfill and hire that can help sway as you're on that trajectory for growth.
Yeah, when I first started this business, I had a dining room table, and then I had those dining room chairs around it. And then what I would do to make sure that I was doing what I was supposed to do when I was supposed to do it is I would put on the back of the chair, I would put a sales seat, a marketing seat, an operations seat. And on the back of them, there's this piece of paper. And I would sit in those seats when I was working in that seat, and that made sure that I wasn't trying to sell while I was trying to teach. And so for me, it was very helpful to do that.
I like that. Yep. Yeah. Literally, you just get different hats made.
Yeah, you could do that.
Hat, yeah, integrator hat. Yep, all that stuff.
And when you're wearing that hat, if you're doing anything else, you got to stop. It's very hard to do that. It's very easy in business to start majoring in minor things.
Yes.
The thick of thin things. And so that's just Covey, right? And begin with the end in mind. That's habit 2. We need to know where we're at, right? That's good.
Yeah, definitely.
That's fantastic. So, what is one piece of major advice? Just if somebody said, I'm going to talk to AJ Nealey and he's going to give me one piece of advice that I need to know about business to keep in mind, and it's the thing that I think about all the time over and over in my mind, what would that be?
Man, there's so much, because in business, there's so many things that and obstacles that you're going to face. And I think ultimately too, if you're going to grow a business with people, you ultimately need to work on the self, right? You need to work to be the ultimate leader of your organization. And so you need to take care of yourself. And for you to be an effective leader, you need to be healthy. You need to be emotionally intelligent. There's a work ethic, like I mentioned before, that you have to have. You got to have passion behind what you do. You got to have a curious mind. You got to ask the right questions. You got to surround yourself with smart people. But you also work inside of a vessel that you really do need to take care of. You need to make sure you get proper sleep. You need to make sure you're eating the right things, that you're physically active, that you're a good listener. So really it comes down to you, like how good are you as an effective leader? And because if you're very emotional, you don't take care of yourself, you're always sick, things of that sort. When they say it starts from the top down, it's true. It really is true that if you come in with that enthusiasm and that energy, and you can inspire people, and you can work on yourself as a great leader, and everyone can lead in different ways. Like I think of Steve Ballmer from like Microsoft, like that guy, he reminds me of Ric Flair, like just riling people up. And then you've got the John Maxwell's, which is like very calm, just collected, almost like a pastor. That's really ultimately what you need to be, is to inspire others. So I think that's a big thing. If you're getting into this, you do need to be a really good, effective leader, listener, and all the above. So you got to take care of yourself and develop yourself. to do that, for it to work. Because if you're a hothead, if you're not emotionally intelligent, if you don't like people, those are big obstacles for you personally that you're going to be up against. So you need to understand that things are going to break, people will fail, people will let you down. There will be obstacles and challenges, but you got to be relentless in your passion and your work ethic and your drive, and know that everything's going to be okay. And yeah, that's big. It's you as a person.
Yeah. So I would say you sum it up. I just wrote down here, I wrote, be yourself and become a better self through self-education.
100%.
Is that good?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it, brother.
Be curious.
Well, it was great having you on, and I love you. And you dropped a lot of great knowledge here, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Barry. Thanks, brother.